Hello, Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us at Truth to the Youth. I had somebody ask me about the lunar Sabbath, what I thought about it, and I wish I would have got to this video sooner. I just been busy doing other things. I'm involved in ministry and a father full time, so just I don't often get to do these lives, but I'm really inspired, and whenever I get a chance, and so I just wanted to jump into this. First off, I'm looking at Lunar Sabbath info or lunarsabbath.info, and sorry guys, let's turn this down. So according to lunarsabbath.info, it says that the Sabbath is connected with the lunar cycle, and that it can't be broken, and so it says Yahweh made it known to Moses in Exodus 16. It was connected to the moon on the 22nd, which by default causes the 8th, 15th, and the 29th also to be Sabbath. So according to this, it says that every Sabbath day, according to the Bible, is going to fall on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. And that the 7-day weekly cycle as we know it today is not biblical, basically. So if you're keeping Saturday Sabbath thinking that you're keeping the fourth commandment, you're actually not, because we have been deceived, calendar's been changed, and we're keeping the wrong day. So this made a lot of sense to me when I first heard it, because I was thinking, man, it makes sense that God would put a calendar in the sky that no man can change, no man can adjust the lunar cycle, and if God really wanted us to know the Sabbath day, even in a society where the calendars can be changed and all that, why wouldn't he put it up there in the sky where we can see it, So it made a lot of sense. This was, I don't know, 4 years ago or so when I was looking into it, and I started running into some little issues, just things that I was, complications with it. So first of all, we know that the original calendar was 360 days in a year. This website, 360dayyear.com, says that some historians, scholars, and scientists, along with a few popular authors, have claimed that ancient civilizations used a 360-day annual year. So this website's all about that. It talks about the Mayan Empire, the Egyptian, Aztec Empire, Indian, Samaria, Babylonian, Greece, Rome, China, Hebrews. All these are saying this. So when you go to Google and you type how many days are in a biblical year, it's going to tell you the same thing. 360 days are in the biblical year, especially when it comes to prophecy. When you count a day for a year principle, a year is 360 days, not 365 and a quarter or whatever it is today. So just by that, if you pull out your calculator, and you calculate 360 divided by 7, you're not going to get a full number here. It's not divisible by 7. You get 51.42857, and it keeps going. So that's a complication, I think, because how are you going to say that this 7-day weekly cycle fits into this 360 days a year cycle? Because according to the calendar we go by today, it really doesn't matter when the month starts, when the month ends. The 7-day weekly cycle continues. So for instance, if the 31st of the month falls on a Friday, then the first is going to be Saturday. It just keeps going. The 7-day weekly cycle. There's no astronomical scientific reason why we have 7 days a week. We have years are based on solar, months are based on lunar, but the 7-day weekly cycle, that's what's so amazing about it, is that it comes straight from Genesis. Genesis tells us that God created 6 days. He created. On the 7th day he rested, and we have 7 days a week because of Genesis. So the science can't even explain it. Why are we in this 7 days a week cycle? So let's look at Genesis 1:14, it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." That's Genesis 1:14. Then you jump to Genesis 1:19, and it says, "And the evening and the morning were the fourth day." So I just want to point out that the moon wasn't even created till day 4. So for God to rest on the seventh day, which was 3 days later, um, I guess he would have had to create the moon at the right phase. I'm not sure how that works, but I don't think that God was basing the seventh day according to the lunar cycle, because the moon didn't even exist until day 4. So it just kind of doesn't make sense when you see that the fourth commandment actually reverts back to Genesis. It says, 6 days you shall labor, on the seventh day you shall rest, and then it takes you right back to Genesis. It says, for God created the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that's in it. And he says, and on the seventh day he rested. So it's pointing you back to that 7-day creation. It's not pointing you to a lunar month cycle or a lunar cycle. Even in Psalms 104:19, it says, He appointed the moon for seasons, the sun knoweth his going down. So the moon is for seasons, not for days of the week. That's also what Genesis 1:14 says when it says, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. It does say days because the sun, when it goes up and down, that's another day. That's how you keep up with the days. You watch the sun. Um, when the sun sets, that's a new day. Every time the sun sets, that's why it says the evening and the morning were the first day, second day, third day. So the sun and the moon is for months and seasons, and the sun, it just tells us when it's another day. But we've kept up with the cycle, so that's how we know what the 7 days a week are. So I want to point out in Luke chapter 23, verse 52, it says, "This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. And he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation day, and the Sabbath drew on." So we know that this was, late in the day of preparation day, and the Sabbath was drawing nigh. So we know it was about to be Sabbath. "And the women also which came with them from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre, and his body was laid. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment." So here's a good verse to show that the Sabbath was still important in the New Testament. Jesus' followers, even at his death, even up to his death, stopped doing something as important as anointing the body of Jesus to keep the commandment, according to the commandment, it says. Not according to the Mosaic law or whatever it says, according to the commandment. And then we know the next day, if I can get to it, we know the next day the women came to the sepulchre, and it says, "Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared for, and certain others with them." So we know that the next day after the Sabbath was the first day, because the Sabbath is the seventh day. We know the day before the Sabbath was the preparation day. So in my mind, according to the calendar we know as today, that would be Friday is preparation day. You're preparing for the seventh day Sabbath. The first day of the week is the next day, which they came to the sepulchre. Now, a lot of people will say, we keep Sunday in honor of the resurrection. We keep Sunday because Jesus rose from the dead on Sunday. And they'll say this in defiance to the seventh day Sabbath. And they'll say, no, we keep this. It's a new day. But then they'll say, we can't really know what day the Sabbath was. The calendar's been changed so much, and you really can't rely on history, and you really can't know which day the Sabbath day is. But in the same breath, you're saying we keep Sunday because Jesus rose on Sunday. If you know what day Jesus rose, and you know it was a Sunday, then the day before that would be the Sabbath. So there should be no confusion about what day the Sabbath is, unless you just want to be confused. But we have plenty of things to look to understand what this is, what day it is. So I wanted to look at, what does a historical record actually say? When was Jesus actually crucified? Do we have a date, a set date? And I found a couple. It says, this is thetrumpet.com. It says Friday, April 27th, the preparation day for the weekly Sabbath. So Friday 27th, that was in 31 AD. So Friday, April 27th, 31 AD, he was crucified. That would be called Good Friday. You know, we recognize Good Friday, Resurrection Sunday. Now, if you have Friday and Sunday, then you know the day between those 2 days that he rested in the tomb, that would be Sabbath. No confusion. Here's another website, godswordexplained.com. It says, when did Jesus die? Jesus died on Friday, in 31 AD, April 27th. So here's two sources that say it's probably April 27th, 31 AD. So I was looking at this. If that's the day he was crucified, then the day after that would be Sabbath, and that would be the 28th. The 28th. So I look back here where we look at lunarsabbath.info, and it says Sabbath always falls on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. But according to these records, he was crucified on the 27th, and the next day would have been the 28th, not the 29th. So there's another, for me, another complication in this lunar Sabbath ordeal that says that the Sabbath always falls on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. If we look at the historical record of when Christ died, that doesn't point to one of those dates. So we can look at history. There's something that was called the Council of Laodicea. Now this is when Roman Emperor Constantine was in control, and he was trying to kill out Christianity. He would throw the Christians in the Colosseums and watch them get destroyed and stuff. But for every Christian martyr, there would be 10 more converts. So he was like, man, I cannot kill Christianity. So as the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. He claimed to become a Christian. He said he had a vision of a cross in the sky and all these things, and he claimed to become a Christian. Now, some things happened after he became a Christian, because he instead of trying to persecute Christianity, he began to take control over it. And at the Council of Laodicea, around 363 to 364 AD, if you click major concerns here, he was enforcing religious, he was combining church and state, enforcing religion. Here's some things he said. Enforcing modest behavior. And then here, which is the really big concern, it says outlawing the keeping of the Sabbath and encouraging rest on Sunday. So it says outlawing the keeping of the Sabbath Saturday and encouraging rest on Sunday. So according to historical records of when this happened in 363 AD, they say the Saturday was a Sabbath back then. So I don't know how long ago that this deception supposedly happened, where the calendar was changed and we're being blinded to the lunar Sabbath. But even as far back as 363 AD, they're saying that Saturday was the Sabbath. And why would a Roman who's trying to control and destroy Christianity, why would he outlaw Saturday if it wasn't even the Sabbath? Why would he care? Apparently he's trying to enforce people to keep a pagan day, and he's outlawing the day of the day of the Lord, the Sabbath day that God blessed and hallowed at creation, and he outlawed Saturday. Why would he outlaw Saturday if that was already a deception? So we look here at another Wikipedia source talking about the days of the week. Where did this come from? Where did this 7-day weekly cycle originate from? And it says Catholic and evangelicals point to data suggesting evidence of an early continuous use of a 7-day week, referring to the Jews during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BC, after the destruction of the Temple of Solomon. While the 7-day week in Judaism is tied to creation account in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible, where God creates the heaven and earth in 6 days and rests on the 7th day. Let me look at another source here. So I wanted to show you that all around the world there's no confusion about what day is the Sabbath day. The day we know as Saturday today, by definition, dictionary definition, if you look up Saturday, it's going to tell you it's the 7th day of the week. All around the world, that day that we call Saturday is pronounced like this. Look at these. Sabbath, Shabbat, Subato, Sabata. I don't know these languages, so I'm not going to pronounce them right. I'm probably butchering them, but look at this. Sabatu, Sabata. The root word Sabbath is in so many languages around the world. All around the world, people are calling the day that we call Saturday, they're calling it Sabbath. Why would they do that? Is the whole world deceived? I think it's a lot simpler than that. I think that, Jews have not forgotten what day the Sabbath is. They're keeping Saturday as the Sabbath. All around the world, it's pronounced Sabbath. Historical record shows us that Rome outlawed the keeping of Saturday to enforce a pagan day of worship, Sunday. Why would they do that if there was no significance to it? This was interesting too. This guy, this is called the Star of Bethlehem documentary. He used special software that mathematically tracks the stars and everything. And his conclusion of what day was Jesus crucified on was this.
Jesus must have been killed in a year when Nisan 14 happened to fall on a Friday. Can you see that? Okay, that really narrows things down. Let's get some more clues up there. Jesus himself is about 30 years old when he began his ministry. John recounts 3 Passovers during Christ's ministry. And we know he was taken before Pilate. And we know when Pilate sat, because Tacitus, the Roman historian, records it, 26 to 36 AD. So all these things taken together, plus more stuff on the website, come to one conclusion. Only April 3 of 33 AD seems to fit all the lines of evidence.
So this says April 3, 33 AD. April 3 was the day of crucifixion, he says. But according to the lunar Sabbath, Saturday, or the Sabbath, always falls on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. And this guy says, according to his software, that Christ would have been crucified on April 3rd, making the next day Sabbath April 4th. The 4th is not the 8th, it's not the 15th, it's not the 22nd, it's not the 29th. Now, I want to show you, this is the nail in the coffin. I could take you to scripture and show you, but I think everybody is probably familiar with that it says, in 6 days you shall labor, and on the 7th day is the Sabbath day of the Lord. That's specific. That's not saying, pick a 7th day and keep it. And how can it be the 7th day of the week if that's not a continuous thing? You can't say, 10 days from today will be the 7th day of the week. Does that make sense? If I said today's Sabbath and 10 days from now will be the Sabbath, well, how is that the 7th day if it's 10 days away? I want to show you the lunar Sabbath. First, has the 7-day weekly cycle ever been interrupted? Now, this is not a Christian website. This is webexhibits.org. This is just people who study the calendars and looks like astronomy and all kinds of stuff. They say, has the 7-day weekly cycle ever been interrupted? Because that's what a lot of people say. Well, the calendar's been changed so many times, how can we know? There is no record of the 7-day week cycle ever having been broken. Calendar changes and reform have never interrupted the 7-day cycles. It's very likely that the week cycles have run uninterrupted at least since the days of Moses, possibly even longer. They're saying longer because uh, even pre-biblical, things that predate Christianity, the Babylonians and stuff, they understood this 7-day weekly cycle that we go by today. This says that the 7-day weekly cycle has never been interrupted, but yet we know that the calendar has been changed. So I want to give you a visual of this if I can find my calendar here. This is how that works. How can the calendar be changed, but the 7-day weekly cycle never be interrupted? Let me show you. If, let's say that, I can't get this in view. Okay. So let's say that Trump made a law saying tomorrow, today right now is, it's Labor Day. It's Monday the 7th, as you can see right here. Let's say that tomorrow Trump says, by law, tomorrow is officially December 25th. And they set it into law. We wake up the next morning, and from here on out, we start the calendar at December 25th. It's still going to be Tuesday. It's still going to be the day after Monday. It's still going to be the third day of the week. Just because this date here, September 8th, is now officially December 25th, doesn't change the fact that it's the third day of the week, because the 7-day weekly cycle has nothing to do with the year or the month. It's a 7-day reoccurring cycle over and over and over. It never interrupts. It just keeps going, keeps going. It doesn't matter if tomorrow's January 1st or February 8th. It doesn't matter, because the 7-day weekly cycle is completely unattached from any of that. So yes, the calendar has been changed. Things have happened like that. There's been laws that say tomorrow is officially this date, but it's still Tuesday always follows Monday, and so on. That's never changed. Now let's look at the lunar Sabbath. Let's look at the lunar calendar. This website is called thecreatorscalendar.com. Very cool concept, but we're looking for truth, right? Truth to the youth. That's what this is all about. If this was real, I'd be all for it. Believe me, I have no reservations about that. I'm not trying to defend something I was raised on. I wasn't even raised on keeping the Sabbath. I went to churches on Sunday. So this has nothing to do with me trying to defend and keep some kind of tradition. I just want to know truth. And when I look at this calendar, if you just look at this calendar, it looks okay, right? We got day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7 right here is in gold at the end. And you see Sabbath. And then 7 days later, you see Sabbath. 7 days later, you see Sabbath. 7 days later, you see Sabbath. It falls on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th, just like we were told on the other website. But here's where the complication happens when you go month to month. So every 7th day is the Sabbath, right? Correct. 6 days you shall work, and the 7th day you shall rest. The 7th day of the Lord is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. So 7, you count 7 more days, you got the 15th, you count 7 more days, the 22nd, you count 7 more days, the 29th. Now look when you go to this month, same thing. We see Sabbath is at the end of the week here in this box. Sabbath, 7 more days, Sabbath, 7 more days, Sabbath, 7 more days, Sabbath. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now this is where the complication happens. Check this out. You see this number 30 in the calendar here? That's day 1. So let's count that. That's the first day. 1. Now down here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But Sabbath isn't until the next day. According to this month, the Sabbath is on the 8th day of the week. How can you do that? God said, 6 days you shall labor, and on the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. That cannot work according to the lunar cycle. You're always going to have complications like this. Again, we see the 29th is the 7th day Sabbath, but then you have this 30th day of the week right here, and so you count that one as one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the next day is Sabbath. That's the nail in the coffin for me. I hope some of this made sense. There's some interesting things here. We got history to look to. All around the world, people say Sabbath when they say the root word Sabbath for the 7th day of the week. Any dictionary will tell you that Saturday is the 7th day of the week. We see that history tells us that Rome outlawed Saturday and enforced Sunday. We see that the weekly cycle was never interrupted. It's always been ongoing because it's completely detached from months and years and all of that. We see that Jesus died either on April 27th or on April 3rd, which would make the next day Sabbath falling on April 4th or April 28th, which does not line up with the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th. That's Bible history. That's historical record. Are we going to deny historical record? Are we going to deny the beast power who outlawed Saturday? Are we going to deny that this calendar is not divisible by 7 and that you end up keeping the 8th day instead of the 7th day of the week? My conclusion is that the lunar Sabbath is another deception. We've already been living under a deception because the beast power outlawed the true Sabbath, started enforcing Sunday worship, and to this day, many churches keep Sunday, and they don't know why. And they'll tell you, well, the day doesn't matter anymore. They'll say the day doesn't matter, but I'm telling you, when you start saying Happy Sabbath and, oh, today's the Sabbath, all of a sudden they feel like the day matters because they'll fight you on that. And they'll say that you can't know the day because the calendar's been changed, yet they're telling you they keep Sunday because it's the day of the resurrection. How can you say that in the same breath? We keep Sunday because of the resurrection, but you can't know what Sabbath is. It's the day before the resurrection, right? There's one more point I wanted to make, but I hope that this clarifies. If you have any questions, comments, please leave it down in the bottom. I'd love to read those. I really hope that this clarified things because I dealt with this. To me, this looked like, wow, this is true. That God made a calendar in the sky that no man can change. One thing I did want to say too is in this Catholic Catechism here. Catholic Catechism. They talk about the Sabbath, but then they start talking about the Lord's Day, which we know according to the Bible, that phrase, the Lord's Day, only appears in Revelation. That's the only time. And according to the Bible, if the Lord has a day, it's the Sabbath because he says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. And it says, the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. So the Lord's Day is the Sabbath day. Don't be confused by terminology like this from the Catholic Church. So this is what they say. The Lord's Day. Jesus rose from the dead on the first day of the week. Because it is the first day, the day of Christ's resurrection recalls the first creation. Because it is the 8th day, I don't know why they call it the 8th day now, following the Sabbath, it symbolizes the new creation ushered in by Christ's resurrection. For Christians, it has become the first of all days, the first of all feasts, the Lord's Day, Sunday. We all gather on the day of the sun. That's their words. We all gather on the day of the sun, for it is the first day after the Jewish Sabbath. They call it the Jewish Sabbath. Did Jesus say Sabbath is for the Jews? No, he said Sabbath was made for man, not Jews. He said it's the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. I've never once seen the Bible say this is a Jewish Sabbath or a Jewish day. Look at this one. The Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrines. In here, they're not shy to tell you. It says, let's say that. Oh man. Well, here it is. It says, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. They openly tell you, and they boldly admit, we have the power to do so. We have the power to change times and laws. According to um, Daniel 7:25, Daniel 7:25, it says that the Antichrist power would think to change times and laws. The only law of God that is also a time is the Sabbath, and that is exactly what has happened. The one commandment that starts with the word remember has been forgotten. It's been changed by the beast power, the power that proudly proclaims to be the mother church. It's also called the mother of harlots in Revelation. They proudly proclaim to have the power to change uh, times, laws, and even precepts of Christ. That's their own writings. Look into this. Ties into the mark of the beast and things like that, but this video is specifically to talk about the lunar Sabbath. I really hope this clarified some things. I really wanted to mention one more point, but I can't remember what it was. So with that said, I'll pin it in the comments if I remember. I hope this video helped you out, and I hope it was short and quick enough that you can share it with other people. God bless you guys. Keep seeking that truth to the youth.